Now, to kick off the show today, we are seeing a lot of property owners and landlords being impacted by the ongoing impact of COVID. And it varies across the state and the states around the country. But we're seeing the ongoing impacts of the eviction moratoriums. We're seeing landlord insurers pulling back from rent cover, which is creating some interesting challenges for new property investors. And we really need to get an update on what property owners need to be aware of and what they can and can't do both now and moving forward. So to discuss this, we're being joined today by Lauren Robinson, and she owns and runs Rental Results. She's been in the industry for over 18 years, which is the equivalent of about 40 years in any other industry, Lauren. And her recent book, Rented, really helps you to take the stress out of the whole property management process. So welcome aboard, Lauren.
Oh, thank you, Bushy.
Yeah, now really looking to have a chat today to get you to give us an update on what's happening in the market. Obviously, given your expertise in Queensland, but probably some broader thoughts on other areas of the country as well, if you're able to. But just to really sort of dig into the subject, what are the ongoing impacts that you're seeing with COVID having on landlords as it currently moves forward?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of the things we're seeing is vacancy rates in certain areas are definitely increasing, and we're seeing rents dropping in certain areas. So I think it's really important to make sure that if you're a property owner, that you're making sure that there's open communication with your tenants. So the minute they fall behind in the rent, you're having those conversations to make sure that they are not COVID impacted, or if they are, then you're putting together or considering payment plans. Tenants and property owners really need to be working together at the moment. And also the good thing is that we've actually had Terry Scheer last week actually lift the embargo for new business for the landlord preferred policy. They still have the embargo in place for the short-term policies and investment properties in Victoria, but that is a positive sign that we're seeing that insurance companies are starting to lift that.
Good. So does that mean that from a rent cover perspective, Terry Scheer are back in that game?
Exactly. Yeah. So we were all very happy to see that happen. And I think, you know, as time goes on, we'll see other insurance companies start to do the same thing, which is so important for an investor.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just to, I guess, reconfirm some of the measures that have come in as a result of COVID. I know Queensland actually pretty much leads the game in this respect in terms of the criteria that someone's got to tick the boxes to effectively be able to tap into the COVID provisions. Can you give us a quick summary on that?
So I guess eligibility to confirm if they've been affected. So they or someone they care for are COVID affected. They are subject to quarantine direction. A public health direction has closed their employment or restricted their employer's trade or business. They're self-isolating because they or someone they live with or are the primary carer for is vulnerable, and they're unable to work because of travel restrictions. So I guess that also coupled with the fact that they have to have also suffered a 25% loss of income or more, as well as the rent payable is 30% or more of a person's income. So there's a number of criteria.
Yeah, so and that must make it an interesting challenge for you in the property management space, liaising between the landlord and the tenants. How is it affecting the whole leasing process for you moving forward?
Yeah, so it's in Brisbane, we're actually seeing it's been an interesting market. We've had some properties, so houses in particular, we've had rent prior to even advertising. We've had a waiting list of tenants wanting certain houses, whereas we've got vacancy rates in the city, Brisbane City itself, of 13%, which is huge. Oversupply sits at around 3%. So you can imagine, rents are dropping in those types of areas. In terms of leasing, so we're now utilising things like 2D, 3D floor plans, video walkthroughs. We're also doing 360-degree virtual tours, so making sure that the properties are really, and also FaceTime inspection, so that tenants who are in quarantine are still able to find a long-term property, which has been great. When it comes to leasing a property, I think owners, as always, need to make sure that they're considering job stability. So we're having quite a few tenants who have been affected by COVID submitting application forms. Those tenants we've had some offering the full rent in advance because they've been able to draw on their super funds and other funds, so that they've been able to alleviate the owner's concerns by paying that rent in advance.
Yes, that's a very smart move on their part to start doing that. And it sounds like it's what COVID has done is really emphasised the focus on average properties that are in excess supply and good quality properties. So these sort of exercises have probably just been amplified as a result of COVID. Would I be right in saying that, Lauren?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing is that we're finding that in Brisbane in particular, and I guess that's probably the same around the country, is that furnished properties. So with our borders in particular shut, we've obviously got less, well, we've got no, like the international travel market's gone. So there's that furnished market is even smaller than what it used to be. So owners, you know, really in those furnished properties, with those furnished properties, should be considering whether to remove the furniture and open up that market to a wider network.
Yeah, smart move. So coming back to the owners and landlords then, what can and can't they do, and what should they and shouldn't they be doing moving forward then?
Yeah, so I guess it's really important that tenants and property owners should be working together to reach an agreement at this moment. So if you do have a tenant that is suffering excessive hardship because of COVID, making sure you're sitting down with those tenants, talking, and obviously the tenants would need to provide evidence to support their claims, such as employment separation certificates, confirmation from Centrelink, medical certificates, and the payment plan should also include whether the difference in the reduced rent and the current rent will be paid back. So we've had a number of tenants who have had to go on payment plans, and then at the end of that period, they would pay that back. So that was initially at the beginning when the job seeker, job keeper payments were starting to, before they actually kicked in, we were having a lot more tenants who were affected. And I think we will see that once the job seeker, job keeper payments are reduced as well.
Right. So I guess we're sort of coming to that point. September 30, we're seeing the eviction moratorium effectively come to an end. We're seeing
Yes.
JobKeeper and JobSeeker extended through until the end of March. There's going to be some interesting times there. How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is a freeze on evictions for rent arrears if the tenant's unable to pay their rent. And that, I guess that is going to have, that's definitely going to have effects. Also, we've got fixed term tenancy agreements that are due to expire or due to end before the 29th of September must be extended unless the tenant requests a shorter time. So property owners, there's a number of reasons that they can end the tenancy at the moment, as can tenants if they've been COVID affected. So some of the new reasons for property owners and tenants to end the tenancy include the property owner or their immediate family need to move into the rental property. The property owner is preparing the property for sale, or the sale of the property requires vacant possession. The tenant's experiencing domestic and family violence, or the tenant finds on moving into the property that's not in good repair. So break lease costs will be capped at the equivalent of 1 week's rent for eligible tenants that need to end a fixed term tenancy early. So there's definitely a number of factors that have come into play that we need to be aware of, but also will affect owners and tenants.
Well, that's a really good rundown, Lauren. The take home I'm getting here is that communication is critical. And I'm also picking up that if you're a landlord or a property owner and you don't have a specialist property manager on your team that's looking after you in these challenging times, then you're probably exposing yourself to considerable risk. So, Lauren, thanks for coming onto the show, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Bushy.